Good morning, comrades. You are listening to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning, Comrade. We got Jeff on the show with a very, very special interview. We have a couple of workers from the Starbucks Union over in Lafayette. And if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves really quickly, one at a time, that'd be really great.
I'm Aubrey.
How you doing,
I'm
Aubrey?
Roman.
Roman
I'm Ethan.
and Ethan. So we got Roman, Aubrey, and Ethan over here. And I got in contact with Roman through former guest and friend of the show, Billy, who was one of the main organizers in the now we can say successful union organizing drive at the Maple Street store right in Uptown New Orleans. And so I guess really quickly, if y'all could just sort of lay out what how things started. How did this whole thing get off the ground?
Um, I could go.
Yeah, you go. Yeah.
Okay, so it all started after um, there was a situation that happened in the store, and Ethan. Uh, it was like it was a serious situation, kind of. Um,
Yeah, say
and
what the situation.
so
Our AC went out that day, basically.
Your what went out?
Our
Your
AC.
AC, the air conditioning. That is a very serious situation.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yes.
That is
like,
not.
"Shit,
No, that's
in
not. That's
Louisiana."
no joke.
Yeah. I caught wind of like what was happening at the store during like the middle of the day. People were texting me. Aubrey texted me that day as
Yeah.
well about like how unbearably hot it was in the store
I think we were sitting at 80 degrees for a good,
for
I'd say probably close to like
4 hours.
4 to 5 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe even more.
And then that was happening all day. And then I came in early that day, and then I experienced that of how bad it was in the store. Because I understand we're around hot equipment all day, and it generally gets hot in the store even with AC.
Yeah.
But it was to the point where I was about to probably pass out on the
Yeah.
floor from heat exhaustion.
It was bad. Like we were literally fanning ourselves off with like our play cards. It's just like this little plastic piece. We were just sitting there, like it was unbearable.
Yeah.
And we had a shift try to get in contact with somebody to fix it, but nobody would. Like we couldn't really do anything about it. And that's as far as my story goes. I know that Ethan has a whole other side to that
Yeah.
later in the day.
Whenever after I went on like my first 10, after like 2 hours on the floor, I come back to one of our shift supervisors, telling her like I either need to go home or like something needs to get done about the AC because like I can't be working in these conditions. She texted our manager. Our manager contacted our DM to find a solution, and then their solution was to go buy a
Box fan.
like a box fan from Home Depot and to transfer our back AC air to the front so that we can work more. And that conversation led to me contacting my district manager that day and calling her and basically telling to her face that her solution was going to cause more problems and that we are still working in these conditions and we thought we shouldn't. And after that conversation, we got the store shut down for the day. Thank God, because
Yeah, thank God. What a relief. I mean, like I worked at a store. Like it was actually not even like an official store. It was like it was a one of the ones that's in Barnes and Nobles. And when I this was shit. This was 15 years ago. I'm old, like I said, I'm old. But hot milk, hot water, hot coffee, hot equipment, all kinds of stuff. Like you are running around, you are sweating. It is not a pleasant situation especially when you're busy, or even actually you probably don't even notice it much when you're busy. But when it dies down and
Yeah.
you kind of like take a breath and like notice what's going on around you, you're just like, this is uncomfortable. This is not good.
It was very uncomfortable.
it was very bad. Yeah.
that was whenever it started. I would say that's whenever the idea came up. And
How long ago was this? How long ago was this?
That was whenever I first started, so like 2 months ago.
2 months ago. Yeah.
Okay. So then later in the day, you said you had an experience as well, Ethan.
That was
No, that wasn't the end of it because
that was his situation. Was him ending up calling the district manager and
Closing it down.
closing the store down.
Okay. So that's the beginning steps. Sort of what kind of happened after that?
Oh, so they started questioning partners. What after that they were being very like friendly, like how are you doing, like just stuff like that. It was unusual because they don't normally do that. And then they
Why are
would
you
meet.
being so nice to us?
Yeah, they're like why? Because we're used to them just sitting off to the side and not really interacting with us when the DM is there and our SM is there. But after that, that's whenever they started questioning people and checking in on them, and um, they made quite a few comments. One of them said being like, I don't want the store to be the first in Louisiana to unionize. Stuff like that.
So after that day that the 18 went out, they were already on the already ready to like start having quote unquote union talks or like conversations with partners about the union, even though we haven't even like truly decided or reached out to Starbucks Workers United.
It all started as like just kind of a joke. Like if we were on the floor and like something inconvenient would happen or like anything like that, we'd kind of just be like, oh, this is why we need to unionize. And so it all started being a joke, and then we actually started being seriously questioned about it. And I think the first time that I was questioned, I got pulled to the back by my store manager. We had a one-on-one, and she was asking me if I had ever heard of unions and whatever, like, and I was like, no, like I'm only 17. So I kind of just played dumb on that end. So I was just like, yeah, like I've never heard of that. I don't even know like what that is. And she explained it to me in very corporate terms of like, what's just adding a third party in, and it just makes it more complicated for us to have one-on-one. So she explained it like that, and
they played the hits. They played all the hits from back in the day, from their first album.
And I think a couple of other partners at our store had conversations with our managers, between the store manager and the district manager, like that.
I was one of the other people that had one of those conversations as well.
How did yours go? Was it similar?
It wasn't as similar. I didn't play dumb because I already knew about all this stuff ever since Buffalo happened. I've been kind of keeping tabs on it and like seeing what's going on. So I like told them in full confidence. I was like, yeah, I know what a union is. I know how they function. Like I know all this information about it. I didn't explicitly say what the information was, but they knew that I was educated about it, and they were like, oh, okay. And then that part of the conversation stopped.
Yeah. I was questioned the day that Ethan was questioned. Actually, one of the shifts on duty was in the back talking to our store manager, and our store manager was like telling the shift like, it breaks my heart that someone came up to me and told me that Roman was recruiting people on the floor.
Pretty much saying that it like
you made your manager sad. Congratulations.
Yeah. And it was kind of like crazy because they assume that I am head of the committee, which I'm part of the committee. But our manager knew, like already kind of like had a hint that I was part of it. So our shift was like, Roman's not part of the union. They're just manipulating him. Like, just go easy on him, whatever. So we had to sit down because our store manager wanted to talk to me. She broke down to me in tears. Not talking about the union, but like, I just don't know what I could do to make this better. Like, what can I do to like help make the store better? Like, I don't work for, like, I work for y'all, this and that. I'm like, can I leave? I clocked out. I'm not getting paid to talk. I need to go.
Yeah.
She really does love coming.
I want to circle back a little bit, and so Ethan, you said that you had been paying attention to what happened in Buffalo. I guess my question would be, one, how would you how you say you were paying attention to, what had you seen prior to this moment, and then two, when you, I could follow up a little bit with it, but like when you started talking with other people on the floor there, were they aware what was going on as well? Were they paying attention what was going on with the first unionizations over in Buffalo, and then the ones kind of sprouting up? Because when you're This is, you said it started 2 months ago.
Mhm.
That means this is what, May, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
If this
April,
we're recording in
Yes.
it's almost July. So we're thinking about May. There were probably almost 100 stores organized by that point. So I'm sure that management is like freaking out because they see unions popping up like mushrooms in all these Starbucks stores across the country. And then two, I'm interested in the sort of where everybody else was at in terms of paying attention to this.
Yeah, I've been following Buffalo ever since they like first filed to unionize. I'm a very like, I guess like researchy person. I have like a background in like public speaking, and like some of the events require a lot of research, and that's just like something I like to do in pastime. And since it related to work, I was like, oh, this might be something useful later on. Thank God I did. I've been following them, and then I've been seeing like a lot of like other stores starting to unionize, seeing the reasons for unionizing, reading their letters, as well as like seeing all the union busting tactics that they were implementing on Buffalo stores and all the other stores that were unionizing. So like I already had this vast knowledge, especially how like a union could actually be started and all that information. And we have this like small clique of workers that we like to talk to each other outside of work a lot. So I was just like, hey y'all, this is like what's happening with Starbucks right now, and like all this union. So like here's all this information.
You to me like late after like closing.
Literally. And then like all that information, like it started to get in their heads and be like, wow, this actually is a problem.
Yeah.
And then that's when
I feel like we kind of like resonated with it too, because at first, whenever I first started, I was like, we don't have a reason to unionize. Like, there's nothing wrong. And then we started seeing all the other stores popping up, and I was reading their letters, and I was like, oh, we do have a reason to unionize. And it's like, it kind of resonates because you think that something's normal, and then you realize, oh, that's not. So it's just, it was kind of a wake up call, I guess.
Yeah, a majority of people on the floor didn't really know what was happening with the unions and Starbucks and all that. So it was like always a fun conversation to be like, yeah, this is what's happening, and like this is the reason why. And then they're like, oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I kind of see that here too. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, we're like the big three. We're the big. I would say the big three. We were the ones that like kind of came together and reached out to people about it, and like came to like, okay, like this is going on. We need to do something, because not only are we losing like partners, we're also like losing like what Starbucks is supposed to be, like what they try to stand for, So, I mean, it's been a lot these past few weeks.
Always.
So we get really quickly one more thing. I wanted to kind of highlight something that Aubrey mentioned, is that everybody, like you have issues like at your job, and like interestingly enough, and I think that that's like something that I've heard in multiple conversations that I've had with multiple people from different stores, is that not only does everybody have issues, but they seem to be the same issues across a lot of these stores as well. So I mean, again, it sounds to me again, and I don't want to speak for y'all, but it sounds like y'all are advocating for yourselves so that you're making your jobs better, so that you can do your jobs better, and so that you can, do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, were you gonna say something?
Oh no, I was just like, I 100% agree. Absolutely.
And yeah, the other thing too is when it comes to like breaking information or like giving information about what's going on in a place that's not near you, it's like you'd be surprised how little people like are aware of what's happening in places that aren't there. Like I remember, I'm a teacher now. I teach middle school, and a couple of years ago in 2018, there were red state strikes across the country in places like West Virginia, Oklahoma, Arizona. And like I'm obsessing over this stuff, like reading every day, and I could talk to some of my coworkers, and they're like, what's going on? Where a strike statewide in all these other states? Really? This is like you don't realize, I suppose. This is speak to Ethan's experience. Like you don't realize that sometimes even when you're like paying attention to things that feels like people would know about, you don't realize that sometimes you're kind of in a little bit of a bubble. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, let me pause for station ID real quick. You listen to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade, WHIVFM.org/listen. Like you said, you can listen live and also get more information about our show at goodmorningcomrade.com. We mentioned a little bit about the beginnings of it. And then, so when you did start talking about this with your coworkers, how did that start? How did that go? Because that seems to be like, that would be the next step. Did that happen immediately, or like what happened next?
I feel like for us it was easier because, like I said, we kind of had our own little clique, I guess you could call it, like outside. So the idea was already going between us, and then after we sat in on our first meeting, they had told us that we needed to have like probably 5 to 6 members in our committee.
So you're talking about meeting with Starbucks Workers United?
Yes.
Okay, so y'all reached out to the next thing y'all did was reach out to them.
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
They told us that we needed 5 to 6 members. A lot of people, I felt like, were a little bit scared because a lot of people need this job, and that's really understandable. But somehow, I'm not even really sure how it happened exactly, like how we got our other committee members on board. I know that one of them was very, very, very last minute. Like, we had already released the letter, and he had come up to us and was like, why didn't y'all tell me? Like, I want to be a part of this. And so it was just like...
It was like, capitalism, let's destroy it.
That's a different thing too. Like it's a difficult thing because you're like balancing this, like we need to make sure that we're not like tipping off management when you're recruiting people in one at a time, and inevitably, somebody's going to be last in that bringing people in, and you want to be sensitive to the fact that, like, hey, I want to be a part of this too. And I've even seen situations where, unfortunately, that would be a reason, and I'm glad it doesn't seem to have been in this case, that would be a reason that they would oppose because they weren't brought into that process. And so you really do need to be mindful of how you're talking to people, but like you're really walking a tightrope, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Have y'all seen anything else like that, or anything else like that?
Most of the people that we end up talking to about the union at work, they're either on the fence or they're like 100% already for it. Like the majority of people that have already signed cards.
Yeah.
Like
there wasn't much talking even done. We were kind of just like, hey, like we released our letter to unionize. How do you feel about that? Like we were trying not to be too upfront about it.
We were just trying to get their outlook on it.
A good handful of them were like, "Oh yeah, I'll sign."
Some surprised us. Some surprised us because some, like, we were kind of like, "Oh, like maybe they won't be part," and then they're like, "Yeah, I'm on board," and we're like, "Okay, yeah,
that's awesome.
Here you go."
It's always like a really pleasant, like a surprise when you talk to somebody.
And lots of surprises with our store. I feel like there were people that we were like, "Oh, they'll definitely be on board," and then turn around and we're like, "Absolutely not." And then there are people who we were like, they would not be on board, and then turn around and we're like, "Oh yeah, where do I sign? Like I want to be a part."
Yeah.
Well, Lafayette's an interesting town for that too.
Yeah.
Like part college town, part like regular city where people live, and like it's kind of like walks a really interesting line.
Yeah,
it does.
and I mean, Lafayette's fairly large, and in terms of, I mean, like as far as, especially considering like the size of a lot of the cities in the state, it's really an interesting place, I think. Around here, I don't go there enough.
I almost say it's interesting.
It is interesting.
Anyway, just to kind of, so shortly after y'all had your first initial convening conversations, and then you're meeting with Starbucks Workers United. This is about a month or so ago, I'm guessing, thereabouts.
This is like a little bit over a week ago.
So your first meeting with Starbucks?
Our first meeting was around 2 to 3 weeks ago.
Okay, and then the next step was the release of the letter?
It wasn't our initial step. We just fast-tracked because
the letter gives protection.
What was the initial step, I guess is my point. What was the initial step?
We were going to start, we had our committee together, and then we're going to start getting cards signed. And then we were going to get the cards signed and send it out, and then the letter. But then they were already starting to suspect us, and our store manager already had my name in her mind about like as a suspect of the committee. And then they questioned Ethan that same day. So then that day, Aubrey came over, wrote the letter herself. She wrote the letter. So let's give her a round of applause.
All right.
we all like read over the letter, confirmed like that we agreed that our names are.
I'm sorry. You got to speak up a little bit. You got to speak up a little bit. I can't hear you.
Oh yeah, sorry. And then like Aubrey sent out the letter to the committee to get everyone to approve it, so our names were on it. And then the next morning, Starbucks Workers United sent it out.
I was standing outside of our location, and I was trying to get on the phone with one of our other committee members to get them to approve it. And so I was literally on the phone. They didn't answer, and then I texted them, and I was like, "I need you to approve this ASAP so we can get it out." 3 minutes before I clocked in, like I sent it out to Starbucks Workers United, and it was just like it was so nerve-wracking all around. Because you don't know the initial reaction of like what you're gonna get, you know.
Yes.
So let me see. This is your letter, and I'm just gonna go ahead and read directly from this. Is it okay if I do that?
Oh yeah,
yes, you can read it.
This is to Starbucks President CEO, Starbucks Support Center, Seattle, Washington, United States. Dear Howard, we are highly disappointed with the way our partners are being treated at our Star and stores nationwide. We have been mistreated, set to work in awful conditions where our well-being has been repeatedly neglected, and we have been treated as workers instead of partners. Starbucks has failed to show our workers empathy and respect. Instead, they have shown us a lack of communication, a total disregard for our physical and mental health, and an overall hostile, unsafe work environment led by management. We have been patient and given many opportunities for management to correct these mistakes, allow for our workers to be partners, and provide the best Starbucks experience for workers. I like that, by the way, and how this is sort of like laid out, because it's accurate. It sounds to me like that it accurately sort of like lays out. We wanted to solve these problems, and this is the recourse that we have.
And that's kind of what I tried to emphasize was the fact that this was not our first solution. We were not trying to jump onto like a bandwagon or anything like that, because I know that that's how it can be perceived. But it was like we really waited until the very, like, this is our absolute last resort to even, like, we talked about it for months, but like Ethan said, we really didn't actually sit into a meeting until 2 to 3 weeks ago. Like, it wasn't something that we had in mind or that was our intentions. Like, it kind of just, it got to the point where nobody else could stand it anymore, and then we decided that we had to do something about it.
I gotta ask you something before I move on with the letter. And this is something that me and Robert, one of the co-workers on the show, and some people have also had in some conversations about this. Do you think that the heavy-handed sort of like pushing into what you want to do, the meetings and all this other stuff, pushed you towards the direction of pursuing unionizing, or do you think it actually kind of like was an initial barrier to overcome, or maybe a little bit of both?
That is a great question.
I feel like it was probably like a mixture of both, honestly.
Yeah, I would say a mixture of both too.
Yeah.
Can you kind of like expand on that a little bit?
Because I mean, like Aubrey said, this was like our last resort. Like, we obviously never wanted to, like, because we knew like the implications of like starting, like what would happen to the store, what would happen to our relationships with like higher management and all that. And we were like obviously scared to actually start it because of those relationships that we already built with our higher management. And
I was gonna say, you hear about like union busting, and you know, people are getting fired for being a part of these unions, and so it was something that we really didn't want to result to. But like I said, it was kind of just like, it got to the point where if we didn't change something, then we kind of realized that management definitely wouldn't be the one to change it.
And then,
right, exactly.
Nothing would actually change in the store, and then the cycle is perpetuating and continuing.
Because we've reached out to management so many times. I started a little bit like months after Ethan, and from my journey with Starbucks, the moment that I started back in like last August to now, we've went to management about a lot of things, and like about all that's been going on, like our frustrations, our concerns, and they say that like we could help out, and it's I don't know, it's like the hope of like, okay, maybe like something's gonna change, maybe they will work on something, and then like still facing the same stuff that you've vouched to them about. It sucks.
You're doing the same thing over and over again.
It sucks.
Yeah, and it was like, I mean, I started last April, so 2021. And I've been seeing these patterns happening ever since like my first day working there. Like I've seen so many partners leave because of stuff not getting fixed. I've seen like really close coworkers like leave not too long ago because of everything that was going on in the store. And I'm like, you know what? It's time for to stop. Like I'm tired of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I've only been there. I've only been at Starbucks for 3 months now, and it's something that even I can tell is happening. So it's kind of just, I don't know. I've talked to management a good handful of times now because I was in a really bad situation with my work before I started at Starbucks. And I had expressed to our management that I wouldn't let it become like that I would speak up for myself, that I wasn't going to let people walk all over me anymore. And
that's awesome.
Management nodded and was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, yes. And then they turned around and did the exact same thing that my old workplace was doing. And so that was kind of a slap in the face.
Yeah. Not be walked all over, and then they proceed to immediately walk all over you.
Yeah.
It sucks even more because we see these new people come in, and you know, like obviously Starbucks isn't gonna doesn't want us to express our frustration in front of them because they want the new people to come in, and they're like, oh, we got all these awesome benefits and all these things, like you're gonna be in good hands, this and that, and it makes me feel sad for them because I was them at one point, you know, like
we all were.
We all like the idea of the benefits, you know, the free college, healthcare, all this stuff, and for that, like all those benefits, to be understaffed and overworked and exhausted and mentally drained, it's at this point it's not really that worth it. And like that's one of the main reasons why we brought this up and wanted to do the union, is because we don't want that to affect our new baristas that walk in.
Yeah, and that's part of what I was gonna say, is that, like I said, I was in a really bad environment with my old job. So I came here and everybody's like, oh, they have all these amazing benefits. Like we have great pay and all of that. And so you're just like, yeah, like I remember telling my mom and being like, it feels like I've just stepped into like a whole other universe of work environment. Mm-hmm. And I know that they definitely tried to warn me before I actually walked in, and they were like being like, I'd be like, I'm just so happy to come into such a positive work environment. And then I would just kind of look at me and I was like, what?
It's a collective group of us.
Yeah.
I'm a trainer, and then like there were some trainers beforehand that like one of the very first conversations we had with our green beans was, hey, just letting you know in advance, this is what really is the situation.
Yeah.
If that deters you, I get it. But if not, and if you want to work through it, I'm here for you.
I literally remember the day that I texted the group chat and was like, okay, I'm here with y'all now. Like, I don't like it here. I don't know. Like, I remember that day so specifically. And it was just like, it was, you know, I feel like it's like a switch, because you're just like in this fantasy, and then out of nowhere, you kind of like snap out of it. And you're just like, oh, yeah. Gotcha. Like,
I do think that's really interesting that you talked about this being like a positive work environment coming in. Mm-hmm. And it's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it sounds to me like this was, at least in the largest part, definitely not in a small part, because of the people you were working with, because of the other workers. And not necessarily, I mean, I'm sure that there were maybe some good things about some of the pay and some of the benefits they're talking about, but like for the most part, management was more of a drain on that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
They played a big role in everything.
Because most of the stuff that like we ended up talking to them, like venting our frustrations towards, they were the only ones that could possibly have the solutions. And then they weren't giving any solution to any regard.
Sometimes they wouldn't even acknowledge our problems. They'll just like brush it off and ignore it. And we're like, oh, okay.
It was remember explaining it as like they would literally tell you to your face, okay, that sounds perfectly reasonable. Like we understand completely. We're going to fix things, and then turning around and doing the exact opposite. Like there was no.
Yeah.
It was just like a switch in between us and then what they would do.
Yeah.
Only lip service. Yeah. Wow. Well, again. Up to y'all for stepping up. I'm going to do one more pause for station ID. You listen to WHIV LP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade, goodmorningcomrade.com. You can listen on WHIVFM.org/listen. If I go back to the letter, Starbucks has set our store up to fail constantly and repetitively. We have suffered 80-degree heat for hours on the floor. We mentioned that already, leaving us to fight tooth and nail to get our store closed for the night. We have been shorthanded on the floor multiple times. That is something, by the way. I'm gonna put a pin there, and we'll come right back to it. We've been shorthanded on the floor multiple times and ignored by management when we needed extra coverage. We have been pushed to our limits to continue to keep our store running, leading for the people to believe that Starbucks is a four-company corporation, not a four-partner corporation. Our workers have received the short end of the stick continuously throughout the struggle for our baristas' rights. These are consistent issues we're fighting to change. I do want to highlight the shorthanded thing because I have heard this happen at so many places, specifically in stores that have been doing unionization drives. And then when you can't achieve your duties or whatever in the store, Billy comes to mind. She talked about this on the show a while ago. I beg your pardon. They talked about this on the show a while ago. When they were too short-handed to handle the amount of business that was happening in the store at the time that they were open, they closed the store. They had the authority to do so as the sort of shift lead, I think this position was, and then came back around. The company did and fired them, which is I mean that if that's not a strategy that management is using, then it sure does feel like one.
Oh no, yeah. The amount of times that we've been short-handed at the store is almost every single day. Like the mornings are usually very much staffed to what they're supposed to be, but once we go into what we call mid-shift, then it drops down to
usually, it drops down to like 3 or 4 people. 4 is like almost the max.
That's
sometimes.
Usually the max
like,
is 4 people. But it goes from like 7 to 4.
Yeah.
And then we're like, for our sales store wise, we are the top like money making store in our district. So we get the majority of the business. And we only have 4 people on the floor, which requires at least one person. Sorry.
Hello, doggy.
That's his dog.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to shut him up.
This is a dog-friendly show. Don't worry.
But what was that? I forgot what was talking.
You were talking about managers.
Oh yeah. But anytime we like tell our management that we are short staffed, like we have countless shift supervisors tell them that, we have baristas tell them that, and it was like an ungodly amount of times that no one would ever listen to us about it.
Right.
And we would never even have like get the chance to shut down the store because our manager would never let us have that as an option.
Yeah.
I have to, before I go, I gotta go bring my boyfriend to work real fast, but it's like 2 minutes away. I'll be, if I'm not back, it was nice talking to you.
Cool, thanks.
But I'll be right back.
Professionalism.
I'm sorry.
Hey, it's a community radio. It's fine.
It's fine. But yeah, like whenever you said that they were getting fired for shutting down the store, like that baffles me because like whenever we needed to shut down the store, like the majority of the time that we never got approval and we just had to suffer through it.
I literally had to, I've had customers like roll up to the drive-thru and be like, do y'all close at 9? And I'd be like, yeah. They'd be like, oh, y'all are always closing at like 6 or 7. And I'm like,
Yeah, and I can explain why, because I'm a main closer.
Yeah.
And for our closing shifts, it's almost entirely worse because we go from that 4 people in mid shift to almost 2 people with closing from 4:15 to 9:30 at night.
And that includes all of the closing duties after closing as well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, were you saying something?
Oh no, I was just gonna say that I feel like between mids and nights, like I started as a mid shift, so that's what I worked my entire first, I'd say like 2 months being here. And I just recently moved to mornings because like just being a mid shift can like wear on you mentally because of how, because we did have afternoon peak for school time because all of the school kids would come through. And so being that short with such a busy, drive through and cafe and all of that, that wears on you mentally to be in 100 different positions with only 3 people on the floor. Like I remember during mids, I used to work bar while taking drive through orders, while like taking cafe orders sometimes. So it's just being in that many places where in mornings, I mean, sometimes it's bad, but most of the time we're fully staffed enough to work mornings. So
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the mids and closers have to pick up slack from like the rest of the day. And
We do. As a closer, we do. We sure do.
Yeah. Our management has also set up unfair expectations that exceeds the expectations of Starbucks. So basically, there's an imbalance of what's expected nationally and locally.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Especially in the store.
You want to talk about that or nah?
Oh yeah, I'll talk about that.
Okay.
It's kind of my experience.
Yeah.
So I find, and I've expressed this to my manager multiple times and to the district manager, that at our store, that I feel like there is an expectation on me to be there constantly, to always be there, to be relied on. The amount of times I've came in early for a shift to help out, and then everyone literally going like, "Yay, Ethan's here! He's gonna save the day." Like, and I'm just a barista.
Right, you're not a manager or anything like that.
Not a manager, not a shift supervisor, just a barista. And then like having that realization that there is this expectation on me, especially from management, even though management does tell me, they're like, "Oh no, we don't have this expectation on them all." I'm like, then why do you text me constantly whenever you need another person or you need someone to come in early or to pick up a shift?
We used to joke that we were like their yes fans because I remember one time we all had the same day off, so we hung out outside of work, and somebody either didn't show up or the manager did not schedule us properly, and we were in a circle like around the table, and like all of our phones lit up around the same time. She had individually texted us, every single one of us, like in a row, asking if we could come in early.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So yeah, that's the expectations.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so one of the things that I've seen in my experience working in a myriad of places too, is that if you do like start to come in early a couple times or help out sort of situations, they peg you as doing that. In a lot of ways, it feels, because this happened to me, it's sort of like you feel like you're being like sucked in because they're like, "Oh, thank you, you're wonderful, you're great," and all that means is that they can rely on you to do that all the time, and it becomes more and more of a regular practice.
How I like to phrase it is that they like to abuse good work ethic.
Yeah.
They like abuse what?
Good work ethic.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, absolutely they do. That's like that is exactly right. And what that ends up doing, and by the way, this is me. This is my interpretation of it. That also is something that covers up for bad scheduling and bad management as well. They're not doing their job. You're doing yours plus, and everything's fine if you do it.
I want to say like my whole first month, almost every single night, I would get a text from our manager asking if I could come in a little bit earlier and work this shift instead of this shift, or can you not close tonight? Can you actually move up to this morning shift? And so it, like my first month of scheduling was like, it was day by day.
Yeah.
Like I would get my new shift every night. Like
how do you live like that? Like seriously, how do you live a life that has any kind of quality to it? When you're basically like, oh God, work could call me at any minute, and I kind of have to go in because I'm the new person, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's especially how I felt because I didn't want to come off as like somebody who didn't really care about their job and just like was only there to work whenever they were scheduled to work, which is what I am now because that's how it's supposed to be. Like you're not supposed to be on call at all times. You're not supposed to be waiting for the store to text on your day off so that you can run in and go help them.
Right.
But I was so scared at first because I wanted everybody to have a good impression of me.
Right.
And there was also like a lot of validation for coming in on those early calls. Like after our manager would text, they would text like, "Can you come in for this shift?" And then you'd say, "Yeah, on whatever." And then they'd be like, "Oh, we appreciate you so much. Like you doing this means the world to me." And it was just a lot of like, I felt like if I would have said no, then I wouldn't have got that. And so it's just, I mean, probably wouldn't have, but
it feels like emotional manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without saying that directly, yes.
Well, anyway, whether or not it is, it feels like it.
It sure does feel like it.
I'm not somebody who like knows these terms specifically inside and out, but that's what it certainly feels like. On multiple occasions, our manager has left in the middle of shift, failed to show up for the shifts, failed to meet dress code while on the floor, slept during the shift, along with changing papers to cover wrongdoings and mistakes made by them. Wow.
Yeah.
They left us with unfair scheduling. You just talked about that. Outside of our availability, and then leaving it to us to find coverage for their mistakes. Ooh, boy, getting into a fight with a scheduler. That's just like always something. Because I mean, again, if I had a nickel for every time when I had a job, I said I don't work X day at X time, and what do you know? I'm on the schedule for that day and time every week for weeks on end. Like. It's the kind of thing that'll make you lose your mind,
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in school, and I don't know if y'all are in school or not, but when I was in school, I would have class at various times, right? I had class at Tuesday at 10 or something like that at the restaurants I would work at. And then, I'm very clear about this availability. But on the front end, they got really like touchy if you tried to change your availability, by the way, because heaven forfend your life change in any way at any point ever. And then so yeah, it just becomes like an entire fight every single time, just because you're trying to like survive and do your job and also go to school or whatever.
Oh yeah, I'm in that situation. I go to college in Lafayette, so like that was always been one of my battles with jobs is like them trying to work with my availability for school. And I kind of put my foot down at my previous job, which kind of got me fired. But that's a whole different discussion. But this one, I mean, generally, from my experience, I don't really get scheduled outside my availability until recently, which was kind of odd. But
really, recently, as in with the last 2 months,
more like 2 weeks. More like
weird. Okay, I'm sorry, Aubrey.
No, I was going to say that I feel like that was also played a big part in us deciding that we were actually going to take unionizing seriously, because that's one of our really close friends from work was a shift manager at our store, and our store manager decided to change the rules and say that all of her shift managers needed to have full availability, and if they didn't, then they couldn't be a shift. And that was kind of like, I feel like the tipping point for our friend. And so she stepped down from shift manager to barista, and I feel like all hell broke loose in that store. Like it was just, we had the district manager, we had the store manager, that was the day that we all got questioned.
Yeah, they saw that as like a major loss, and then they were like, oh, this is going to start domino effect, which it did. They were correct on that part.
After many attempts from our management trying to union bust, before I read that, listen to WHIVLP New Orleans 102.3, the Good Morning Comrade, goodmorningcomrade.com, WHIVFM.org/listen. You can listen live. After many attempts from our management to union bust, where there were not yet a union to bust, we are proud to express our intent to organize a union. Okay. You mentioned some of the conversations. Is there any of the union busting that happened that you haven't brought up yet?
those were the main ones. They like it was just all them like constantly like questioning us about like we've been hearing that there's like starts of a union happening on the floor, and then we're all like, who's starting a union?
Yeah, we're like, we want to know.
We want to know, and then we're like,
sounds like they were fishing a little bit.
They were.
They were.
That's because our manager, like how she gets information out of people, because she explicitly says how she has to do her quote unquote job, because no one really likes to talk to her about issues or because she doesn't listen to them.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sounds like somebody you can't really trust.
Yeah, and then the only way that she's able to get information is she quote unquote says this to everyone. She's like, I have to pull it out of y'all.
She told you that?
Yeah. Oh, she told me that, and probably many other partners many times.
Oh my gosh.
She has to pull information out of us to see what's wrong.
And that's like, part of what it almost like the first time that me and the store manager had sat down and she had started asking me about unionizing and all of this, like I don't think I ever told anybody this, but it's like I felt guilty. Like I felt like I was starting a union whenever I wasn't, because of the way that she was talking about it, like looking at me and like asking these questions that were just very like, well, you know, you can talk to me if you do know anything about it. Like it's nothing to hide.
Yeah.
And it was like I felt like a little kid like getting in trouble, and so.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting like point that you bring up. Like they won't necessarily say that it's like I mean, they'll say that this is something that we want to avoid or whatever, but they can't or won't say that a union is a bad thing.
Yeah.
They can't say explicitly that they're going to stop it, but there are ways that they can make you feel guilty or doing something that is still technically like within your rights, within your, you know, within your interests as a worker, and something that's, I mean, I'm a, you know, been a union guy for a long time. They're good because that's the only way that you're going to have any kind of say in your working conditions. That's the only power that workers have.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I was going to say is like between the first time that my store manager had ever brought up to it and then us going public with our letter, like I felt like I did something awfully wrong, even though I knew, like I felt like I was about to get in trouble because every time the door would open in our lobby, I would look over because I was scared that it would be our store manager. And I was scared that like we were going to get, which I knew that we weren't going to get fired on the spot for going public, but it's just like, it's like this overwhelming feeling of like, I'm about to be punished for something. Like I'm about to be in trouble with somebody because of what I've done, even though everything that we're doing is completely legal. I remember Alyssa, the girl from Starbucks Workers United that we had talked to, she was like, you guys aren't doing anything bad. Like you guys are doing everything legally. Like you guys aren't breaking the law.
No, totally.
That's how we felt for a long time. Like having to like go hush hush around the store and like lightly bring it up and not in a way to where we're giving out too much information and all of this. And it's, you feel like you're doing something wrong. Like you're supposed to be hiding something, even though you're not.
Well, yeah. And you mentioned earlier that when one of you were having a one-on-one conversation, I can't remember which one of y'all brought it up, the manager that you were talking to, that the person was talking to, said that they were very upset and in tears because the union was forming. And it's just like, hold on a second. Why are you so, like, why do you feel this kind of way? I mean, honestly, in a lot of ways, I don't envy like store level management because there's this national push from like literally, you know, Sauron himself, Howard Schultz. Sorry, his name escapes me. But there's a push from him to like stop all this, and then there's a push from the workers to organize a union, and they're just like caught in the middle of the squealing tire in the road itself, you know.
And it was really obvious whenever Roman had come to me and told me that our manager broke down crying to him about all of this. It was really obvious that she was scared for her job. That was her main concern with all of this, because she has told other partners before that she would do anything to keep her job protected. After we released the letter, like she made comments to me about how she's so secure in her job and that Like I to quote
all over the place.
So,
She said that to me multiple times. She was like, my job's not at risk.
yeah, that
Or
was
like all that. And I'm like,
okay.
And it might not be, but like the way that this is sort of like, there's definitely pressure, if nothing
Yes.
else. And you know what? I'm sorry if this feels heartless. I mean, y'all might feel differently, but if I'm in that position, kind of don't care. I mean, like seriously, maybe this sounds a little harsh or whatever, but like if you in your like very horrible no air conditioned situation is if it's either that or your manager, I'm sorry, but like the workers have to activate their own interest, and regardless of a lot of these dynamics, the management seems like it's answering to the corporate structure and to the company and not to y'all.
yeah.
I mean, maybe that does seem callous, but
I mean, there's truth in it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, because like it feels like our manager is more just working for corporate than actually being a manager.
And that's part of what was like. It bothered me a little bit whenever she had told Roman that she works for us and not the other way around, because not once have we ever felt like she works for us.
Yeah.
And that's part of, ever since we went public with our letter, there's been a lot of really great communication ever since. And we were kind of talking about it. We were like, this is obviously her trying to prove us wrong with everything that we've said.
That's not a bad thing, because again, once you stand together with one another, and you're getting at least some of the results of what you are working together for.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm telling y'all what you already know, I guess, but that's a good thing if y'all are getting better, better circumstances on the job, even though again, like you mentioned before, Ethan, your scheduling is still like it's worse and not better.
It's been wavering ever since our letter went public, because we have our good days and we have our bad days. And part of what I was telling Roman yesterday was that my manager called me a couple of days ago and was asking me how she can make the store better, how she can do all this, and like how to make this not a bad job for me. And I was telling Roman, I was like, it all just felt so insincere, because the intent behind it. That all of these efforts go back to her trying to prove to our partners, well, what are they talking about? Because I care about y'all. I do work for y'all. Like, and so it's a really wavering line in between, like, it's sincere and then it's kind of bad again. And then it's just like this continuous cycle of not really knowing where intentions lie, I guess.
Understandable. Yeah. Couple more questions and then we can wrap up. But I did want to talk a little bit about Starbucks Workers United, sort of generally. They've, from what I've my experience with folks, they've been very, very happy with the way SBW has been working. What kind of things have so how's your experience with SBW been? And I don't know, what are some of the interactions y'all have had? You don't have to be specific about it, but
they're really a great organization.
They've been completely amazing to us. Like,
they've literally been helping us on every single form of process. Any questions that we had, they get right back to us, and just actually feeling welcomed into this process.
And I feel like a lot of what we were dealing with beforehand was a lack of support, and Starbucks Workers United has given us so much support in everything. Like,
they give me more support than my manager has.
Right.
Cool.
And the girl that we originally talked to, Alyssa, she's a sweetheart. Like, she answers immediately. I call her all the time. Like, I keep her updated completely on everything. Like, the tiniest thing will happen to the store, and I'm like, hey girl, I'm like, just calling to let you know. And it's just like, and I know that it feels like somebody is proud of us, at least, because I know with our manager and all of that, we've, like I said, it's been a lack of support and a lack of, I don't know the word for it, but just
a lack of compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know Alyssa tells us all the time that like even though what we're doing is amazing, like we still have to take care of ourselves at the end of the day and not to overwhelm yourself. And I feel like not even our managers tell us that. Like
Yeah.
there is no.
So yeah, we love them. They're honestly very great people. We love everything that they're doing. We love their support. We love them helping us through everything, and we're glad to be a part of them.
Well, I mean, they are you. They are your organization. So I mean,
No.
it's awesome. It's great. I guess final question: if folks wanted to help out or support y'all, or before I ask that question, actually, have y'all received any support already from organizations, from anything, from the public in general, or anything like that? Who's been like on your side in this? I know here, there's been like the Southern Workers Assembly, DSA, different groups like that. Yeah, have y'all seen, felt some of this? Even the Central Labor Council, the Great New Orleans AFL-CIO, was supportive of the effort. Step Up, I cannot ignore Step Up Louisiana. They're awesome too. Have y'all had any of those similar experiences of folks being your allies?
We've had a lot of customer support.
Yeah.
Like customers will come through, and if like usually that's like what I bring up to make small talk is like, oh yeah, well we've been kind of going through it, but we just like went public on our efforts to unionize, and there's so much support because a lot of our regulars like know that whenever they come through, we don't look happy anymore. Like we've been struggling for a hot minute now, like a hot minute. But I feel like there's a lot of customer support, and there's a lot of I don't know. I feel like I was expecting a negative response, and so just the positive response that we've gotten has been
like it's been
insane.
Overwhelmingly positive. Like even I was surprised by it because whenever we sent out our letter and everything, we like, and then I started hearing from like Roman and Aubrey about all the customer interactions about how positive everyone was reacting to it. I was just like, wow, in Lafayette of all places, support? Who would have thought?
You know what? I mean, again, the especially I find that interesting. You say that the customers have been on support. I'm not surprised by it because you are the people that have the relationships with the customers. You see them every single day, and I mean, there's a relationship there, right? And I don't know. It's always very nice to see, you know, people supporting workers and when they're trying to fight for themselves. So I guess final question, and if somebody wanted to support y'all or get more information about what you're doing, where can people find that?
We have a Twitter. It's at Lafayette SBWU.
Yeah.
Yes. And we're also trying to organize a sip-in right now. So any updates on that would be posted to our Twitter. So I feel like that's a lot of the support that can be offered right now is just.
Or just coming into our store.
Just coming into our store.
And just being like, I'm here with y'all. I stand with y'all. I appreciate everything that y'all are doing. Right. Like, stay strong.
Yeah. Or the old Union Strong coffee.
Oh yeah.
Yes. I actually had a guy come in Tuesday. That was the last shift I've worked this week. I've been off on these past 2 days, but Tuesday this guy came in and was asking about the union and was like saying that he'd be interested in doing a sip-in and inviting people. And I was like, okay. And then I gave him my number and he texted me. So we will be doing a sip-in eventually. So at some point soon.
Keep an eye on the Twitters if you want to get more information about that. Great. Well, thank you so much, Ethan, Roman, Aubrey. I wish you all the best. Hopefully we get some more information and follow up when you get your dates for election and all the other stuff. And God, y'all are awesome, and I'm really like super glad that y'all made the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to Good Morning Comrade. This has been WHIVLP New Orleans. You get more information about the show on at goodmorningcomrade.com. And once again, if you want more information about the stuff that's going on with these folks here, go to Lafayette SBW Twitter at SBW at Lafayette SBWU on Twitter. Anyway, thanks everybody. Love you. Bye-bye.